Going to get started out here on cutting these commutator brushes with our new Fordham rotary tool here. Need to change the tip on this. Looks like we're going to get wet here in a little bit. It's nice outside right now. Feels good. Start this until the rain starts. I'm not going to make you watch doing an entire all 32 segments or 28 segments cuts on here. I'll make a few to get it started off and then show you the finished product. Let me get started before it starts raining. Alright, that's one done right there. I know you can't really see it very well, but that's one groove cut. I'll go back and dress it later on with saw blade, but that's basically it. You can use your, if you got a small ruler, you can use it to measure it, or your fingernail or whatever. Oh, by the way, since you're wearing a mask anyway, or you should be, because micas, you don't want to breathe it. It gets in your lungs and accumulates. So wear you a mask while you're doing this. And then when you're done doing all the strips, you need to polish these things back out as fine as you can get them, and then wash it really good with contact cleaner. And I'm going to continue on cutting these things. Got a lot of them left. That was just one. It's kind of hard to get started with it because they're all the way up the edge there. Once you get it dug in, just go down a straight line, starting back here and then moving towards you. Then we'll polish it out again, slap it on later on when we're done. Make sure this thing spins over good before we jam it back in the tractor. Alright, that's about it. Got it dressed up. Got our grooves undercut there. Pretty good. Got them all the way around. Just need to clean it up and put the starter case back on and bench test it. Make sure it's got enough power to turn. And then we'll throw it in there and see if it'll turn under a load. Make sure it's got enough. Let me polish on this thing some more and go back over each strip again, just to make sure. Got a couple here I can go deeper on out on the ends, but the brushes don't ride out on the ends, so we should be fine there. If you can't really see it, but where my thumbnail is, over to here, where the brush path is, that's how far that thing's worn down. So it's been in there, it's had a hard life, especially when it's coated with oil and probably sand and whatever else is in that bell housing. Clutch dust getting up in the starter. Like I said, this thing was completely coated inside with oil, and I've had the kerosene sitting in there since yesterday in the bell housing. We'll drain it out, or maybe start it. Once we get it started, we'll run it with the diesel in there or kerosene in there a little while, and then drain it out and put some lacquer thinner or brake clean on the clutch disc to try and get any rest of the goo off of it. Really, you want it as dry as can be because it is a dry clutch. I remember one time I Guy had brought like maybe a 73, 74 Harley Davidson Electra Glide to me, and it has a wet dry clutch. That's what they call it. Basically, it's a dry clutch inside of a housing that has oil in it. And serviced the bike, got it running, sitting there idling, went outside, popped it in gear, and it took off across the parking lot because the clutches were stuck together from oil sitting in there on them. And I mean, that's a lot easier to take apart than this thing. So I pulled the primary cover off, took the clutches out, cleaned them in lacquer thinner, sanded plates in between the clutches, and good to go. Basically, you don't want your tractor taking off on you. I haven't done it, but I've heard of people doing it, having it in their garage and pushing the clutch in, thinking the clutch is released, and pop it in gear, and it runs through the wall of their garage or into their car or whatever. It happens, so be careful. Make sure your clutch is working. You don't want to run anybody over. Kids, dogs, house, car, equipment, whatever. Well, let me clean this thing up. Start to try and assemble it before it starts raining out. It's pretty. Wind's blowing up in the trees there. Looks like rain's probably gonna rain. The garden needs it. It rained some night before last. Pretty good rain. So we'll see what happens. All right, there'll be more to follow. All right, that's everything about cut. Need to let my Fordham tool cool off a little bit. It's getting hot from running. Gonna go back, polish this out, and then run a saw blade down each one to just make sure I got the right depth on everything and they're all uniform across. It's kind of hard to do it with that Fordham tool to get them the exact same all the way across. Don't worry if you hit a strip, you can just polish your back out. I know I've hit a couple of them, but thumbnail gauge has them pretty decent. Just need to even the mic out across them before it starts to rain. Tool's working pretty good. I was using a diamond impregnated tip to at least get started with. It ain't perfect, but we'll see if it works. It should work. Those brushes weren't even touching the armature. They were about halfway. They were a good more than halfway gone. Probably two-thirds of the way shorter than the other ones. And judging from the looks of everything, this thing probably, they didn't want to put a starter on it because I think they probably priced one or whatever. Who knows? You can't tell with old stuff like that what happened to it. Let me go find a saw blade. All cleaned up, as much oil we're going to get off there. Now, before you put it back in the case there, put a little dab of grease on the end of the armature there. Just a little dab will do. You don't need to coat it. Put some on both ends there. Try not to put too much. You just need a little coating on there. Let me put this bushing back in here before I forget. Hold on. Need one of them fancy dancy camera holders to be able to do this so I can see stuff. Put your bushing back in there. Slide it back up into the case there. And put the top back on my grease can there. And go grab the starter case. Make sure I got it doubly clean. About ran out of brake clean, contact cleaner. That stuff's expensive now. It's almost $5 a can. Used to buy it by the case. If you can, get the non-chlorinated one for cleaning stuff like this. Electrical stuff, you really should be using electrical contact cleaner, but this is really old technology, so brake clean works good on it. There's our starter case. All cleaned up, new brushes, ready to go. Now for the hard part, getting it in there and lined up, holding the brushes while I slide them over the end of the strip. I'm going to try not to cuss while I'm doing this. It's bound to happen now, but we'll see. So remember, you got to get it lined up, and contact for the field coils and the brush plate has to line up with the solenoid here when you're putting back together. I got 2 new bolts for the case here. The long bolts that bolted to here, because one of them was mangled up pretty good. Alright. This thing's being a bear to get them brushes lined up on the end of the armature there. Gonna need some help doing this. Let me go grab my helpers. A couple of thin screwdrivers and maybe some forceps will work, just to spread the brushes out. Okay, couple of screwdrivers and a pair of forceps work good. Got it on there finally, and it's just snapped down into place. Just have to put the bolt back in, where the field tool brush lead hooks up to the solenoid. Put the seal back on here, the little rubber gasket seal, and bolt it on with our new bolts, and we can test it, bench test it, and we'll see. Alright, that didn't really work. It spun, but it didn't spin out like it's supposed to, so the armature's probably toast. Gonna have to order a new starter. It worked, but it didn't. It spun over probably about half speed. Fresh battery, just bench testing it. So that thing should almost, when you hit power to it, it should really jump out of your hand. And I mean, it spun, but it was just that under a load, that ain't even enough to try and crank the motor over. So I'll be ordering a new starter. Nah, I'm out like $5 maybe for brushes. But at least we know. Sad part is, armature costs more than almost as much as a starter does buy a whole new starter. So gonna have to order a starter for it. So much for that. well, like I said, it was worth a try. Uh, Again, it's time for that. If you like my content, subscribe, comment, share, like, all that jazz. Hit the notification bell. We'll keep you posted on future endeavors. Thank you.